Hey everyone. Tonight we're slipping through the creaky wooden door of a medieval village cottage, where the air smells of damp straw and yesterday's bread. You're blinking awake in the half-light, your breath catching as you realize you're not just here to survive another day, you're chasing beauty in a world where looking good could mean the difference between noble whispers and peasant sneers. The stakes brutal. You might not survive this beauty regimen, with its toxic paste and impossible ideals, but you'll sure learn how to dodge a sunburn like a pro. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love seeing who's drifting off with me across the globe. Now, turn down the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise. And let's get started on tonight's journey together. Your bare feet hit the cold dirt floor, and you squint at the sliver of dawn creeping through the shutter. Already, your mind's racing as your skin pale enough to pass for someone who doesn't shovel manure for a living in medieval Europe. Beauty isn't just vanity, it's a billboard screaming your social rank. Pale skin, the kind that looks like you've never seen a sunny day, is the gold standard. It says, "I've got servants to fetch my water." Thank you very much. But getting there, that's where things get dicey. You're not reaching for SPF 50. You're eyeing a clay pot of homemade gunk that smells like vinegar and regret. The year is 1348 and the Black Death is creeping closer to your village, shaking up priorities but not the obsession with looks. Even as neighbors bolt their doors, the local noblewomen are still dabbing on their beauty creams. Why? Because status never quarantines. You've heard whispers of the king's court in Paris, where ladies slather their faces with Venetian ceruse, a fancy name for lead paste mixed with vinegar. It promises a face so white it glows in candlelight, but it also leaves your hands shaky and your stomach churning. You're not that desperate yet. Instead, you grab a simpler mix flour, egg white, and a splash of sour milk. It dries like plaster, but it'll do for market day. Here's the quirky bit some village girls swear by smearing their faces with raw egg and letting it harden overnight. They call it the moon mask, claiming it pulls the sun's taint from your skin. You try it, peeling off the crusty film at dawn, only to find your face feels like old parchment. Does it work? Your neighbor Agnes swears you look noble as a nun, but her eyesight's been failing since last harvest. You're not convinced, but you'll take the compliment. Historians still debate whether this pale skin craze was purely about class or tied to deeper spiritual stuff. Some say the church pushed the idea that ghostly skin meant a pure soul, untainted by sin. Others argue it was just rich folks flexing their indoor lifestyles. Either way, you're stuck in the middle, dodging sunlight like a fugitive. You drape a scrap of linen over your head as you step outside, muttering about how nobody warned you beauty was this much work. The village square is buzzing, and you catch a glimpse of the miller's daughter, her face dusted with chalk to fake that high-born glow. She's dodging the baker's leer. Who jokes? What's that? Lass trying to haunt the castle? You stifle a laugh. Chalk's cheaper than lead, but it smears in the heat. You're not much better, though. Your flour paste is already cracking at the corners of your mouth. By noon, you'll look like a badly glazed pie. The pressure's real, and it's not just skin deep. You hear tales of noble women in London who bleed themselves with leeches to drain the ruddy from their cheeks. You shudder, thankful your village healer only peddles herb brews that taste like dirt. But even those come with warnings: too much sun, and you're no better than a field hand. Too pale, and folks whisper you're sick or worse. Cursed. You can't win. As you weave through the market, you notice the kids playing noble lady, wrapping their faces in rags to mimic veils and avoid the sun. Even they know the rules. You pause by a stall, tempted by a peddler's miracle salve that smells suspiciously like pig fat. He winks, saying, "One dab, and you'll outshine the queen." You roll your eyes last time you bought his junk. Your face broke out in hives. Joke number 2. Why did the peasant girl hide under a tree all day? She thought shade was the new skincare routine. You smirk, but you're half tempted to try it. The sun's climbing and your makeshift veil slipping. You tug it tighter, ignoring the sweat trickling down your neck. Beauty's a battlefield, and you're armed with nothing but hope and a bad recipe. By dusk, you're back in your cottage, scrubbing off the day's grime with cold water and a rag. Your skin's not much paler, but you feel a flicker of pride. You survived another day without poisoning yourself or getting called a witch for looking too tan. As you curl up on your straw mattress, you wonder if tomorrow you'll dare try that egg mask again? Probably not. Beauty's brutal, but you're tougher. The candle flickers out, and the village hums with nighttime sounds: crickets, a distant dog, the creak of a neighbor's door. You drift, thinking of those far-off noblewomen and their deadly creams. You're no lady, but you've got your own kind of glow. Maybe that's enough for now. You wake to the rooster's crow. Your skin still tingling from yesterday's flour paste experiment. The village is stirring, but your first thought isn't breakfast. It's how to keep your face pale enough to avoid the peasant label. In medieval Europe, ghostly white skin isn't just a look, it's a social currency, and you're broke if you catch a tan. You shuffle to the window, squinting at the dawn light like it's your personal enemy. Today's market day, and you need to look like you belong in a castle, not a cowshed. The obsession with pale skin is everywhere. From muddy villages like yours to the glittering courts of 14th century France. Take 1390, when Queen Isabella of Bavaria set the trend by appearing at a feast with a face so white it looked like polished marble. Her secret, a lead-based cream that left her trembling by evening. Word spread, and soon every noblewoman from Paris to Prague was slathering on the stuff, chasing that ethereal glow. You're not royalty, so you stick to safer if smellier mixes. But the pressure's the same. A tan means you're toiling in the fields. Pale means you're sipping wine in a manor. No middle ground? You rummage through your shelf, pulling out a pot of chalk dust mixed with vinegar. It stinks like a pickling vat, but it's better than the lead paste the traveling merchant tried to sell you last week. That stuff's a noblewoman's game, smooth as silk but deadly as a dagger. You dab it on, feeling the grit settle into your pores. It's not perfect, but it'll fool the baker's wife, who's always sniffing for gossip about who's gone rustic. Here's the odd fact: some noble ladies took paleness to a whole new level by painting blue veins on their temples and wrists. Why to look so fragile? You'd think they'd faint at a breeze. You try it with a bit of crushed berry juice, smudging faint lines across your hands. It looks more like you wrestled a hedge than channeled a duchess. But you're committed. You catch your reflection in a bucket of water and snort delicate, more like deranged. Historians still debate whether this pale skin craze was just about showing off wealth or if it had spiritual roots. Some say the church linked whiteness to purity, like a soul scrubbed clean of sin. Others argue it was pure class warfare nobles flaunting their indoor lives while peasants baked in the sun. Either way, you're dodging rays like a thief dodging the sheriff. You wrap a linen scrap around your head, hoping it passes for a stylish veil and not a laundry mishap. The market's alive with chatter. And you spot the miller's daughter, her face caked with flour not from baking, but from her own beauty hack. She winks, whispering, keeps the sun off and the suitors curious. You grin, but your chalk paste is already flaking, dusting your shoulders like dandruff. A kid points and giggles, yelling, "She's molting." You shoot him a glare, muttering, "Keep laughing, and I'll haunt your dreams." Joke number 1, and the crowd loves it, even if it's at your expense. You weave through stalls, dodging the sun's glare under overhangs. The butcher's wife eyes you, her own face suspiciously pale. Rumor has it she uses arsenic powder. Swearing is just a pinch. You shudder beauty's not worth a one-way ticket to the graveyard. Still, you can't help but envy her smooth look, even if it's a lie. You pause by a peddler hawking noble cream, his voice dripping with promises. 1 jar and you'll outshine the moon. You roll your eyes. Last time you bought his wares, your face smelled like rancid cheese for a week. Joke number 2. Why'd the noblewoman bring a parasol to church? So she could pray without getting peasanty. You chuckle, but you're clutching your makeshift veil tighter as the sun climbs. The village kids are playing court lady, ducking under tarps to stay pale, their faces smeared with mud for authenticity. It's cute, but it stings even they know the rules. You're not much better, scurrying from shadow to shadow like a rat with a reputation. By afternoon, your chalk paste is a disaster. Streaking in the heat, you duck behind a cart to reapply, muttering about how modern sunscreen would be a miracle. The baker catches you, smirking, trying to join the ghost, and you snap back. Better a ghost than a sunburnt ox like you. Joke 3, and he laughs, tossing you a crust of bread as a peace offering. You nibble it, wondering if skipping meals might give you that wasted-away noble look. Probably not. As dusk falls, you trudge home, your face raw from scrubbing off the day's mess. The lead craze might kill the rich, but your chalk and vinegar routine's no picnic either. You collapse onto your straw bed, the village quieting around you. The pressure to stay pale is relentless. But you've survived another day without turning beet red or dropping dead from poison. Small victories. You stare at the ceiling, the moon's light sneaking through a crack. Tomorrow, you'll face the same game, dodge the sun. Fake the glow. Pray nobody notices your cracks. But for now, you're just you. Flaws and all, and that's enough to carry you into sleep. The morning chill seeps through your cottage walls, and you're already dreading the mirror, or rather, the polished tin plate you call a mirror. Your face might be pale enough to pass muster, but now you're fixated on your forehead. In medieval Europe, A high, broad brow is the ultimate flex, a sign you're noble, wise, and maybe just a touch otherworldly. You're no lady of the court, but you've got market day looming, and a low hairline screams peasant louder than a muddy hem. Time to get plucking. This trend hit fever pitch around 1420 when Elizabeth Woodville, future Queen of England, rocked a forehead so vast it practically had its own postal code. Her portraits, with that gleaming expanse above her brows, set the standard for every noblewoman from London to Florence. You're not aiming that high, but you grab a pair of rusty tweezers, wincing as you tug at stubborn hairs. Each pluck stings like a wasp, and you're half convinced you're sculpting a disaster instead of a masterpiece. Here's the quirky tidbit some women went beyond plucking, slathering their scalps with walnut oil and vinegar to burn off baby hairs. The smell's enough to make your eyes water, and you're sticking to tweezers. Thank you very much. You try to imagine the court ladies? Their maids hunched over them like surgeons, turning foreheads into billboards of status. Your own efforts are humbler, your fingers shake, and you're pretty sure your brow's more lopsided than lofty. Historians still debate whether this high forehead craze was about mimicking royal fashion or something deeper, like signaling intellectual purity. Some say it was a way to look civilized, separating the elite from the rustic masses with their wild, untamed hairlines. Others argue it was just vanity run amok, with courtiers competing to see who could sacrifice the most hair for glory. Either way, you're caught in the crossfire, plucking away while muttering about the absurdity of it all. You pause to check your work in the tin plate, squinting at the uneven line. It's not bad, but it's no Woodville. The village healer swears by a paste of burnt barley to keep hair from growing back, but you're not desperate enough to smell like a charred loaf. Yet, you dab a bit of honey on the raw spots to soothe the sting, hoping nobody at the market notices the red patches. Beauty's a battlefield, and your forehead's the front line. Stepping outside, you pull your hood low, partly to hide your handiwork, partly to dodge the sun's judgment. The market's buzzing, and you spot the baker's wife, her forehead gleaming like a polished shield. She's clearly been at it with something stronger than tweezers, rumor has it. She uses a caustic brew that leaves her scalp tingling for days. You nod politely, but she smirks, trying to outshine the moon. Are we? You fire back. At least I'm not burning my head off for it. Joke number 1. And she laughs, but you both know the game is cutthroat. The village kids are at it too, mimicking the highbrow look by smearing mud across their hairlines to fake a broader forehead. One boy points at you, giggling. You look like a monk's tonsure. You roll your eyes and toss him a pebble. Keep laughing, and I'll shave your head to match. Joke 2. And the crowd chuckles as you weave through the stalls, your hood slipping just enough to show off your work. You catch a glimpse of the miller's daughter, her forehead so smooth it could double as a canvas. She's got the nerve to use a pumice stone, scraping away like she's sanding furniture. You shudder, your tweezers are painful enough. The merchant at the next stall winks, offering a noble brow balm that smells suspiciously like rancid fat. One dab, and you'll dazzle the court, he crows. You snort. Dazzle the pigs? Maybe. Joke 3, and he shrugs. Undeterred. By noon, your forehead's throbbing, and you're questioning your life choices. The sun's high, and you're dodging its rays like a fugitive, clutching your hood like a lifeline. You overhear two women whispering about a noblewoman who went too far, shaved her scalp raw, and got an infection that left her bald for good. You wince, touching your own tender brow? Beauty's not just brutal, it's a gamble. As evening falls, you trudge home, your face stinging but your pride intact. You survived another day of medieval makeover madness, and your forehead's passable, if not princely. You collapse onto your straw mattress, the village settling into quiet. The moon peeks through your window, and you wonder if you'll ever get this beauty thing right. Probably not, but you're stubborn enough to keep trying. The candle's long gone, and the night hums with crickets and distant owls. You drift, thinking of those court ladies and their endless plucking. Your own brow's a little uneven, but it's yours, and that's enough for now. Sleep's calling, and you let it pull you under, dreaming of a world where beauty doesn't sting quite so much. You stir in your straw bed. The morning's chill nipping at your toes, but your mind's already on your hair. In medieval Europe, long, glossy locks aren't just a style, they're a currency, shouting youth, fertility, and status louder than a herald's trumpet. You run your fingers through your tangles, wincing at the knots. Today's a festival day, and if your hair doesn't shimmer like a noblewoman's, you might as well stay home. You've got work to do. This hair obsession hit a peak around 1370, when troubadours at the court of King Charles V of France spun poems about ladies with tresses so long they trailed like silk banners. Those songs spread, and soon every woman from village maids to duchesses was chasing the dream of hair you could braid into a rope. You're no court lady, so you skip the gold-threaded nets and reach for a bone comb, each snag feeling like a personal betrayal. Your goal. A braid that says, "I'm marriage material," not "I wrestled a goat." Here's the quirky fact: some women padded their braids with horsehair, or even saved their own shed strands to weave into rat's cushions that bulked up their styles. You eye a dusty corner of your cottage, wondering if you've got enough loose hair to fake a noble bun. Instead, you boil rosemary and lavender, straining the fragrant water to rinse your locks. It smells divine, but your hair's still more straw than silk. You sigh good hair days are rarer than a sunny winter. Historians still debate whether these hair rituals were universal or mostly a noblewoman's game. Some say even peasant girls mimicked court styles, braiding ribbons for festivals. Others argue village women kept it practical, tying hair back for work and saving the fuss for church. Either way, you're plaiting your hair with clumsy fingers, hoping it holds through the day's dancing and gossip. You sit by the window, combing slowly to avoid snapping strands. The village is waking, and you hear kids chanting a rhyme about a maiden whose hair grew so long it trapped a prince. You snort your hair's barely past your shoulders, and the only thing it traps is dust. You weave in a scrap of blue ribbon, a hand-me-down from your sister, and pray it screams elegant instead of desperate. The mirror, your trusty tin plate, shows a passable braid, but you're no troubadour's muse, stepping into the festival. The air hums with fiddles and laughter. You spot the baker's daughter, her hair coiled into a crown studded with wildflowers. She's clearly been at it for hours, and you feel a pang of envy. She catches your eye and grins. "Nice ribbon, steal it from a knight." You retort, "Nah, just bribed a fairy." Joke number 1, and the crowd chuckles as you weave through the dancers. The miller's wife is next. Her hair dyed a risky chestnut with walnut husks. It's bold, but you smell the nutty tang from 3 feet away. Rumor has it she singed her scalp trying to lighten it with lye last year. You shudder your rosemary rinse is tame by comparison. A peddler hawks mermaid tonic, claiming it'll make your hair grow to your knees. 1 sip, and you'll outshine the Queenie barks. You scoff, I'd rather keep my stomach. Joke 2, and he shrugs, moving on to the next gullible soul. The dance kicks up, and your braid's holding barely. You catch the blacksmith's son staring, and you wonder if it's your hair or the ribbon. Probably the ribbon. You twirl, feeling a flicker of pride, but then a kid trips and yanks your braid, unraveling half your work. Oi! Watch it, you snap, retying it while muttering about clumsy gremlins. The kid giggles. You look like a witch's rope. You glare? Better than your rat's nest? Joke 3, and the crowd roars, but you're salvaging your style with gritted teeth? By dusk, your hair's a mess, but the festival's glow softens the sting. You notice the old widow, her silver locks loose and shining under the torchlight. She's not chasing trends, and yet she's the belle of the night, laughing with the elders. It hits you maybe hair's not just about length or shine, but the stories it carries. Yours is tangled, but it's yours. You trudge home, the village settling into quiet. Your scalp aches from the day's fuss. But you're alive, and nobody called you a goat wrestler. You collapse onto your mattress, the moon's light tracing your braid. Tomorrow, you'll comb out the knots and start again. Beauty's a grind, but you've got grit to spare. The night hums with crickets, and you drift, dreaming of hair that flows like a ballad. You're no princess, but your ribbon's still blue, and that's enough for now. The festival's afterglow lingers as you wake, but your focus shifts from your tangled braid to your waistline. In medieval Europe, a slender, cinched silhouette isn't just flattering, it's a billboard of status, screaming you're too delicate for fieldwork. You tug at your worn gown, wishing it hugged your frame like the noble women's dresses you've heard about. Today's a church day, and you need to look like you belong in a pew, not a plow. Time to get creative. This silhouette craze peaked around 1350, when the court of Philip VI of France popularized the cote hardie, a fitted gown so tight it took a small army of maids to lace it up. Noblewomen from Burgundy to Castile followed suit, their waists squeezed to wasp-like proportions, signaling they never lifted anything heavier than a prayer book. You're no courtier, so you grab a length of rough cord, sucking in your breath as you tie it around your middle. It's not elegant, but it'll fake a curve for the sermon. Here's the quirky tidbit: some women stuff their gowns with reeds or moss to exaggerate their hips, creating an hourglass look without starving. You eye a clump of dried grass in the corner, tempted to pad your skirt for extra flair. Instead, you tighten the cord, wincing as it digs in. It's not noble, but it's better than looking like a sack of turnips. You check your reflection in a bucket of water passable, if you don't breathe too deeply. Historians still debate whether these extreme silhouettes were enforced across all classes or just a noblewoman's burden. Some say even village girls laced up for special days, mimicking the elite. Others argue peasants prioritized comfort, letting their gowns hang loose for practicality. Either way, you're tugging your cord tighter, muttering about how breathing's overrated when beauty's on the line. You shuffle out, the cord pinching with every step. The village path is muddy, and you're already regretting this plan. At church, you spot the miller's wife, her gown suspiciously smooth, like she's got something padded under there. She catches your eye and smirks. Feeling noble today, you quip. Nobler than your lumpy stuffing. Joke number 1. And she chuckles. But you both know the game's fierce. Everyone's judging everyone's waist. The sermon drones on, and you're trying not to faint. The cord's cutting off your air, and you're cursing every troubadour who sang about willowy maids. You shift in the pew, catching the baker's daughter eyeing your silhouette, her belt studded with cheap tin, a poor man's version of the jeweled girdles noblewomen flaunt. You nod in solidarity, both of you are faking it, just with different props. A kid behind you whispers, "She's gonna pop." You turn and hiss, "Keep talking, and I'll tie you up next." Joke 2. And the congregation stifles laughs, earning a glare from the priest. After church, you linger in the yard, where a peddler's hawking slimming cords dyed with dubious herbs. Wear this, and you'll outshine a duchess, he crows. You snort. Outshine a scarecrow? Maybe. Joke 3. And he shrugs, undeterred. You're tempted, but your current cords torture enough. You notice the old widow, her gown loose and flowing, unbothered by trends. She's chatting with the elders, her laughter carrying over the crowd. Maybe she's onto something comfort over corsets. The day wears on, and your cords leaving red marks. You duck behind a hedge to loosen it, gasping like you've surfaced from a dive. Freedom tastes sweet, but you retie it lightly, knowing eyes are still on you. You've heard tales of noblewomen fainting at feasts, their laces so tight they couldn't eat. You're not that dedicated, but you skip lunch anyway, hoping for that fragile look. Spoiler, you just feel cranky. By dusk, you're home, unlacing with a groan. Your ribs ache, but you survived church without splitting a seam or passing out. You collapse onto your straw bed, the village quieting around you. The moon's glow sneaks through a crack, and you trace the red marks on your skin. Beauty's a tyrant, but you're stubborn enough to keep fighting. You drift thinking of those court ladies, their waists cinched to impossible sizes. Your cord's no coat hardy, but it's your armor in this game. The night hums with crickets, and you wonder if tomorrow you'll dare go loose like the widow. Probably not. You've got too much pride and too little sense. The morning sun filters through your cottage's shutters, and you're already wincing at the thought of your feet. In medieval Europe, dainty, delicate feet crammed into pointy-toed shoes are the ultimate status symbol, screaming you're too posh to trudge through mud. You've got a village feast tonight, and if your feet don't look noble, you might as well show up in clogs. You eye your pair of patched leather shoes, their toes barely pointed enough to pass muster. Time to squeeze in and pray for balance. This foot frenzy peaked around 1360, when the courts of Edward III of England went wild for poulain shoes, those absurdly long-toed monstrosities that stretched inches past your actual foot. Chronicles describe lords tripping over their own status symbols at banquets, their toes curling like elf slippers. You're not that fancy. So you stuff your shoes with wool to keep your feet from sliding into the narrow tips. It's uncomfortable, but it beats looking like you stomp grapes for a living. Here's the quirky tidbit: some folks cheated the Poulain trend by filling their shoe tips with sand or pebbles to keep them stiff, turning every step into a crunchy gamble. You try it with a handful of straw, but it just makes you hobble like a drunk goose. You check your reflection in a puddle, your shoes look pointy-ish, but you're no court dandy. At least you won't trip over a foot-long toe. Historians still debate whether these torturous shoes were everyday wear or just for showing off at feasts. Some say even merchants and townfolk sported Poulains on special days, while others argue peasants stuck to practical boots or went barefoot. Either way, you're cramming your toes in, muttering about how walking shouldn't be this hard. Your feet are already protesting, and you haven't even left the cottage. You shuffle out, each step a calculated risk. The village path is uneven, and your stuffed shoes make you wobble like a newborn foal. At the feast, you spot the blacksmith's wife, her shoes so pointed they could skewer a rat. She catches your eye and grins. Trying to outdance the nobles, you quip. Trying not to spear myself first. Joke number 1. And she laughs. But you're both eyeing each other's footwear, sizing up the competition. The feast is lively, with fiddles and ale flowing. You notice the baker's son, his shoes modestly pointed but polished to a shine. He's clearly spent his last coin on leather dye to fake a noble look. You nod and respect everyone's playing the game. A kid darts by, pointing at your shoes and giggling. You look like a duck. You snap. Better a duck than a barefoot gremlin like you. Joke 2. And the crowd chuckles as you adjust your stance, praying your straw stuffing holds. By mid-feast, your toes are screaming, and you're regretting every life choice. You overhear gossip about a nobleman who got his Poulain caught in a stirrup and face-planted at a tournament. You smirk, maybe your short-toed shoes aren't so bad. A peddler weaves through, hawking noble souls that promise to make you glide like a knight. One pair, and you'll dance with the princess, he boasts. You snort. I'd settle for not limping. Joke 3, and he moves on. Undeterred, you ease onto a bench, trying to wiggle your toes without anyone noticing. The old widow's there, her feet in soft, worn boots, unbothered by trends. She's dancing with the elders, her steps light despite her age. You envy her ease, maybe comfort trumps status. But then you catch the miller's daughter staring, her own shoes teetering on wooden pattens to lift her above the mud. One wobble, and she's down. You stifle a laugh, she's suffering as much as you. As night falls, you hobble home, your feet throbbing but intact. You kick off your shoes, letting your toes breathe. The village hums with laughter and music fading into the distance. You survive the feast without tripping or losing a toe to gangrene, small miracles. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow sneaking through a crack. Tomorrow, you'll face the same shoe struggle. But for now, you're free. The night settles, crickets chirping softly. You drift, dreaming of a world where shoes don't pinch and status doesn't bruise. Your feet are broad and calloused, but they carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake with a yawn, the morning's chill creeping through your cottage. But your thoughts are on your teeth. In medieval Europe, Your smile or lack thereof tells a story louder than a bard's ballad. Perfect pearly whites aren't the goal. Sometimes, a blackened tooth screams wealth louder than a silk gown. You've got a betrothal feast to attend tonight, and your teeth need to say, "I'm thriving." Not "I chew stale bread." You rinse with cold water, hoping it's enough to keep the village gossips at bay. This tooth obsession got a boost around 1400 when sugar from the Middle East became a luxury in Europe's courts. At a grand feast in Venice, Doge Francesco Foscari flaunted teeth stained dark from candied fruits, a sign he could afford the rare stuff. Soon, nobles across the continent were nibbling sweets, their smiles rotting into status symbols. You're no Doge, so you stick to coarse bread and herbs, but you're eyeing a sprig of mint to freshen your breath. A dazzling smile might be a stretch, but you'll settle for not scaring off suitors. Here's the quirky tidbit some court ladies faked. Wealthy decay by smearing their teeth with charcoal paste, hoping to mimic the elite's sugary ruin. You try it, dabbing a bit of ash from the hearth onto your front tooth. It looks more like you ate dirt than dined on delicacies. And you scrub it off, muttering about vanity's price. Mint it is, then chewed slowly to avoid looking like a cow. Historians still debate whether medieval folks cared much about dental health, or just accepted pain as life's tax. Some point to skeletons with worn but strong teeth, thanks to gritty diets low in sugar. Others highlight records of abscesses and extractions, suggesting toothaches were a universal curse. Either way, you're chewing carefully, praying your molars hold out for the feast's tough mutton. You step outside, the village bustling with feast prep. The baker's wife flashes a grin, her teeth suspiciously dark. Rumor has it she's been at the charcoal trick, hoping to impress the merchant's son. She winks. Ready to charm the lads? You quip, "With my breath, maybe." Joke number 1, and she cackles. But you're both dodging the same judgment teeth or a telltale. At the feast, you spot the miller's daughter. Her smile gapped but bright. She's chewing sage leaves, swearing it keeps her breath sweet. You nod in solidarity, everyone's got their trick. The blacksmith's son, though, grimaces every time he bites, probably nursing a bad molar. You lean over, whispering, "What's wrong?" "Bit a rock." He groans, worse, a toothache. You pat his shoulder. "Try a frog on your jaw, heard it works." Joke 2, and he laughs. But you're half serious. Village remedies are wild. The food's hearty, but you're picking at it, wary of cracking a tooth. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman who lost half her smile to sugar and had to hide at court behind a fan. You shudder your mince holding, but you're no fan of pain. A peddler slinks through, hawking tooth powder made of ground shells and salt. One pinch, and you'll grin like a saint he boasts. You snort? I'd rather keep my gums. Joke 3, and he moves on, unfazed. By evening, your jaw's tired from cautious chewing, but you've survived the feast without a dental disaster. You notice the old widow, her teeth worn but intact, laughing with the elders. She's not chasing trends, and yet her grin's the warmest in the room. Maybe beauty's less about perfection and more about confidence, or just surviving long enough to laugh. You trudge home, the village settling into quiet. Your teeth aren't noble black, but they're yours, and they work. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's light slipping through a crack. You rub your jaw, grateful for mint and sturdy molars. Tomorrow, you'll face the same scrutiny. But for now, you're whole. The night hums with crickets, and you drift, dreaming of a world where smiles don't cost pain or pride. Your teeth might not dazzle, but they've carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the faint clatter of pots outside. The village already stirring, but your mind's on your eyebrows. In medieval Europe, brows aren't just facial fluff, they're a canvas for status, framing your face like a noble's portrait or a peasant's afterthought. Tonight's a village council meeting, and if your brows don't look deliberate, you'll be dismissed as a field hand with a face to match. You grab a shard of polished tin, your makeshift mirror, and brace for battle. This brow craze hit a high note around 1450, when Margaret of Anjou, Queen Consort of England, sported arches so sculpted they looked drawn by a monk's quill. Court ladies from Aragon to Saxony followed, plucking their brows into thin, dramatic lines, or even shaving them off to paint new ones higher up. You're not that bold, so you reach for a pair of tweezers more like bent iron pins and start shaping. Each pluck stings, and you're muttering curses that would make the priest blush. Here's the quirky tidbit: some women used walnut juice to dye their brows darker, risking a stained forehead that looked like a botched tapestry. You try a dab of soot mixed with grease, hoping for a subtle arch. It smudges, leaving you looking more like you survived a chimney fire than channeled a queen. You wipe it off, sticking to plucking, but your hands shake, and one brow's already thinner than the other. Great. Historians still debate whether brow grooming was a universal obsession or mostly a courtly fad. Some say even village women tweak their brows for big events, mimicking noble portraits. Others argue peasants left their brows wild, too busy with chores to fuss. Either way, you're plucking away, hoping your uneven arches pass as artistic under candlelight. You step outside, the village humming with council prep. The baker's wife catches your eye, her brows painted high with some mystery paste, probably charcoal and lard. She smirks. Going for the court look, you quip, more like surviving the tweezers. Joke number one, and she laughs. But you're both scanning each other's faces, tallying flaws. The game's ruthless. At the council, you spot the miller's daughter. Her brows plucked to near invisibility, giving her a startled doe look. She's clearly gone overboard, but you respect the effort. You lean over, whispering, "What's next?" Shaving your head. She giggles, "Maybe if it gets me a manor." Joke two, and the room stifles chuckles, earning a frown from the village elder. The blacksmith's wife, meanwhile, rocks bold, unplucked brows, unbothered by trends. Her confidence stings, you're second-guessing your patchy arches. The meeting drags, and you're fidgeting, worried your brows are smudging in the heat. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman who singed her brows off with a hot comb and had to draw them daily with lead paste. You wince, your tweezers are bad enough. A peddler lingers outside, hawking brow balm that smells like rancid tallow. One dab, and you'll rival a duchess, he crows. You snort. I'd rather keep my face. Joke three, and he shrugs. Moving on, by nightfall your brows are sore. But you've survived the council's scrutiny, You notice the old widow, her brows gray and untouched, framing her eyes with quiet dignity. She's not chasing trends, yet her presence commands the room. Maybe beauty is less about perfect arches and more about owning your face, flaws and all. You trudge home, the village settling into silence. Your brows aren't queenly, but they're yours, and they didn't betray you tonight. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You touch your tender brows, grateful for surviving another round of medieval makeover madness. Tomorrow, you'll face the same game. But for now, you're enough. The night hums with crickets, and you drift, dreaming of a world where brows grow just right. Your arches might be uneven, but they tell your story. That's enough for now. You wake to the soft patter of rain on your cottage roof, a relief from the usual morning glare. But your focus is on your skin. In medieval Europe, a smooth, clear complexion isn't just a blessing, it's a ticket to respect, hinting at wealth and divine favor. You've got a weaving circle today, where the village women will judge every blemish. So you need your face to look less like a plowgirl's and more like a lady's. You rummage for your homemade remedies, praying for a miracle. This skincare craze was all the rage by 1430 when Eleanor of Aragon, a noblewoman known for her flawless skin, sparked a frenzy with her rose water and honey washes. Court records mention ladies mixing everything from almond milk to crushed pearls for that coveted glow. But the less fortunate used whatever worked, often with risky results. You're not swimming in pearls, so you grab a clay pot of rose water you distilled last summer, its faint floral scent a rare luxury. You mix it with a dab of lard, hoping it smooths the redness from yesterday's tweezing disaster. Here's the quirky tidbit some women swore by cow's urine for acne, claiming it purged the devil's spots. You grimace at the thought your neighbor tried it once and her cottage stank for weeks. You stick to your rosewater mix, dabbing it on with a rag. It feels soothing. But when you check your tin plate mirror, you're still you. Not Eleanor. A stubborn pimple on your chin mocks your efforts, and you mutter a curse under your breath. Historians still debate how much skincare was practical versus pure vanity. Some say even peasants used herbal washes to keep plague sores at bay, blending folklore with medicine. Others argue only the rich had time for such fuss, while village folk just scrubbed with soapwort and hoped for the best. Either way, you're patting your face dry, dodging the temptation of a peddler's miracle salve you bought last year. It gave you a rash that had the priest whispering about curses. You step into the drizzle, your hood up to protect your freshly washed face. The weaving circles in the baker's barn, and you spot the miller's wife, her skin glowing suspiciously perfect. Rumor has it she's been using lead-based cream, a noblewoman's trick that's creeping into the village. She smirks. Looking fresh today, you quip? Fresher than your poison paste. Joke number 1. And she laughs. But you're both eyeing each other's complexions like hawks. Inside, the women chatter, their hands busy with looms. The baker's daughter, her cheeks rosy but pitted, swears by a mask of crushed strawberries. You lean over, whispering, "What's next?" slathering on the whole fruit basket. She giggles. If it gets me a husband, why not joke too? And the room chuckles. though the elder weaver shoots you a stern look. You notice the blacksmith's wife, her skin rough but unapologetic, weaving with steady hands. She skips the potions, and somehow her confidence outshines the rest. The circle hums, but your pimple feels like a beacon. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman who bathed in donkey milk to stay youthful, only to break out in hives. You shudder, your rose waters tame by comparison. A peddler pokes his head in, hawking angel's dew that smells like sour ale. One drop, and your skin's pure as a saint's, he boasts. You snort, pure as your lies. Maybe? Joke 3, and he slinks off. Undeterred. By afternoon, yet your skin's holding up, though the rain's making your face feel sticky. You're grateful for the dim barn light hiding your flaws. The old widow's there. Her skin wrinkled but soft, like well-worn leather. She's not chasing miracles, yet her warm smile draws every eye. Maybe beauty's less about perfection and more about living long enough to wear your scars proudly. You trudge home through the mud, your hood shielding your face. Your skin's not flawless, but it's clean, and you didn't resort to cow's urine. You collapse onto your straw bed, the rain's rhythm soothing outside. The moon's hidden tonight. But you feel a flicker of pride. Tomorrow, you'll dodge the same stairs. But for now, you're enough. The night hums with raindrops, and you drift, dreaming of a world where skin doesn't judge. Your face might not glow like a noble's, but it's yours, and it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the crow of a rooster, the air damp from last night's rain, but your mind's on your clothes. In medieval Europe, what you wear isn't just fashion, it's a legal contract, with sumptuary laws dictating who can flaunt silk and who's stuck in homespun. You've got a village court session today, and if your outfit screams peasant, you'll be the talk of the tavern. You dig through your chest for your best tunic, hoping it's fine enough to skirt the rules without a fine. These laws tightened around 1363 when England's Parliament passed statutes to keep classes in their sartorial place. Nobles could drape themselves in velvet and fur, but commoners like you were capped at wool or linen, with no fancy embroidery. Across Europe, from Florence to Flanders, similar rules sparked both obedience and sneaky rebellion. You're no knight, so you pull on a russet tunic. Its hem slightly frayed but clean. You add a leather belt, nothing flashy, but it's a touch above the usual rope. Here's the quirky tidbit: some folks dodge the laws by wearing forbidden fabrics under their cloaks, or sewing hidden silk linings into plain gowns. You consider stitching a scrap of blue ribbon inside your sleeve for a secret thrill, but your sewing skills are shaky, and the village tailor's got a nose for trouble. Instead, you polish your belt buckle with spit and a rag, hoping it catches the light just right. Historians still debate whether sumptuary laws were strictly enforced or more of a flex for the elite. Some say officials turned a blind eye to minor infractions, while others point to records of fines and public shaming for overdressed commoners. Either way, you're treading carefully, muttering about how a bit of color shouldn't land you in the stocks. You step out, the village muddy but bustling. At the court session, you spot the baker's wife, her cloak suspiciously fine for her station. Rumor has it she traded bread for a noble's cast-off trim. She winks. "Looking sharp today," you quip. Sharp enough to dodge the law, unlike your frills. Joke number 1. And she laughs, but you're both scanning for the bailiff's glare. Inside, the miller's son struts in a doublet with puffed sleeves, pushing the legal limit. He's clearly betting on charm over caution. You lean over, whispering, "What's next? A peacock's tail." He grins. "If it gets me a bride, maybe." Joke 2. And the room chuckles. Though the magistrate's frown silences the mirth. The blacksmith's wife in plain wool sits unbothered, her practicality a quiet defiance. You envy her ease, maybe ignoring the rules as its own rebellion. The session drones on, and you're tugging your tunic to hide a tear. You overhear gossip about a merchant fined for wearing purple, a color reserved for royalty. You shudder your russet safe, but the temptation to flaunt a forbidden hue lingers. A peddler hovers outside, hawking noble thread that's probably dyed with cheap matter. 1 stitch, and you'll dine with lords, he boasts. You snort. I'd rather keep my coins. Joke 3, and he slinks off, undeterred. By dusk, you've survived the court's scrutiny. Your outfit modest but passable. You notice the old widow, her patched cloak worn with dignity, drawing nods from the elders. She's not chasing fashion, yet her presence outshines the flashiest tunics. Maybe style's less about breaking rules and more about owning your place. Frayed hems and all. You trudge home, the village settling into quiet. Your tunic's not noble, but it's yours, and it kept you out of trouble. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You finger your belt, grateful for its humble shine. Tomorrow, you'll dodge the same laws, but for now, you're free. The night hums with crickets, and you drift, dreaming of a world where clothes don't judge. Your tunic might not dazzle, but it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the faint jingle of a cart outside, the village stirring early, but your thoughts are on the royals. In medieval Europe, kings and queens don't just rule, they set the beauty standards. Their every quirk rippling through courts and villages like a royal decree. You've got a market day ahead, and if you can't mimic a noble's glow, you'll at least need to channel their poise. You smooth your tunic, wishing you had a touch of their glamour to fend off the market's stares. This royal influence peaked around 1410, when Queen Joan of Navarre dazzled the French court with her golden headdresses and swan-like neck, sparking a frenzy for elaborate veils and postures so upright it hurt. From Castile to Scotland, nobles copied her, and villagers like you caught the echoes through travelers' tales and church frescoes. You're no queen, so you drape a scrap of linen over your hair, tucking it to mimic a noble veil. It's more rag than regal, but it'll do. Here's the quirky tidbit: some courtiers wore padded shoulder rolls to exaggerate their posture, looking like human gargoyles to match royal portraits. You try stuffing your tunic's shoulders with wool, but it makes you look like you're smuggling loaves. You ditch the padding, straightening your back instead, though your spine's already protesting. The tin plate mirror shows a strained attempt at grace close enough for a peasant. Historians still debate how far royal trends trickled down. Some say villagers aped noble styles at festivals, using cheap props to play pretend. Others argue commoners stuck to function, rolling their eyes at courtly excess. Either way, you're tilting your chin higher, hoping to fake Joan's elegance while dodging mud puddles. You step into the market, the air thick with haggling and fish stench. The baker's daughter catches your eye, her headscarf knotted in a way that screams court-inspired. She smirks. Chasing a crown today. You quip, just trying not to trip up my ego. Joke number 1. And she laughs, but you're both posturing like you belong in a palace. The miller's wife, meanwhile, sways with exaggerated grace, probably practicing for the next feast. You lean over, whispering, "What's next?" Curtsying to the pigs. She giggles, "If they pay me in gold." Joke 2. And the stall keepers chuckle. The market buzzes. But your stiff neck's killing you. You overhear gossip about a lord who wore a headdress so heavy he toppled into a banquet table. Blaming his royal devotion, you smirk your linen's light, but it's slipping, and you're tugging it back like a nervous squire. A peddler hawks noble veils, their edges frayed despite his claims. One knot, and you'll dine with queens, he boasts. You snort. I'd settle for not eating dirt. Joke 3. And he shrugs. Moving on. By noon, your posture's slumping, and the veil's a sweaty nuisance. You spot the old widow, her shawl simple but draped with quiet dignity. She's not mimicking royals, yet her calm draws every eye, outshining your forced elegance. Maybe beauty's less about copying crowns and more about standing tall in your own skin. You trudge home, the village settling as the market winds down. Your tunic's wrinkled, and your neck aches. But you survive the stairs without tripping over your pride. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You tug off the linen, grateful for its humble weight. Tomorrow, you'll chase the same royal shadow. But for now, you're enough. The night hums with crickets, and you drift, dreaming of a world where grace doesn't strain. Your veil might not dazzle, but it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the soft clink of a neighbor's bucket, the village stirring under a gray dawn, but your mind's on your face, not its color or brows, but its quirks. In medieval Europe, dimples, moles, and even unibrows aren't just features. They're omens, woven into folklore that can make or break your reputation. You've got a christening to attend today, and every mark on your skin feels like a riddle the village will read. You peer into your tin plate mirror, tracing a faint mole on your cheek, wondering if it's a blessing or a curse. This fascination with facial quirks peaked around 1420 when astrologers and village seers claimed moles mapped your fate. A mark on your forehead might mean wisdom, one near your lip, a lustful heart. In the courts of Henry VI, ladies flaunted lucky moles with painted dots, while unibrows were praised as signs of strength, inspired by tales of warrior queens. You're no mystic, but you've got that mole and a slight unibrow you've never plucked. You dab a bit of grease on the mole to make it shine, hoping it passes as charming. Here's the quirky tidbit: some women glued fake moles made of velvet to their faces, chasing the fortunate look of a courtier's prophecy. You consider sticking a bit of charred cork on your chin for luck, but decide against it. It'd probably smear by noon. Instead, you comb your unibrow lightly, aiming for bold, not beastly. The mirror shows a face full of character, if not destiny. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were widespread or just elite whimsy. Some say peasants leaned hard into folklore, reading moles like tea leaves. Others argue only the rich had time to fuss over such nonsense. while villagers just lived with their faces. Either way, you're rubbing your mole nervously, hoping the christening crowd sees it as blessed rather than bewitched. You step out, the village path slick from last night's rain. At the christening, the baker's wife spots you, her own cheek dotted with a suspicious black mark, definitely painted. She winks. Got a lucky mole today. You quip, luckier than your charcoal spot. Joke number 1, and she laughs. But you're both sizing up each other's quirks like fortune tellers. The miller's daughter, sporting a bold unibrow, struts past, head high. You whisper, planning to conquer a kingdom with that brow. She grins. If it scares off the taxman. Joke 2, and the crowd chuckles, though the priest shoots a warning glance. The ceremony hums with prayers, but you're distracted, touching your mole like it might vanish. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman whose mole foretold her marriage to a duke, only for it to be a smudge of ink. You smirk, your mole's real, at least. A peddler lingers near the church, hawking fate balm that claims to align your marks with the stars. One dab, and you'll rule your destiny. He boasts as you snort. I'd rather rule my supper. Joke 3, and he slinks off, unfazed. By afternoon, your unibrow's itching, and you're regretting the grease on your mole. It's attracting dust. The old widow's there, her face a map of wrinkles and moles, each one worn like a badge of survival. She's not chasing omens, yet her quiet smile outshines the painted dots and bold brows. Maybe beauty's less about mystic marks and more about the stories your face tells. You trudge home, the village settling into a misty dusk. Your mole's no prophecy, and your unibrow's no crown. But they're yours, and they didn't curse you today. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon hidden behind clouds. You trace your cheek, grateful for its quirks. Tomorrow you'll face the same whispers, but for now, you're enough. The night hums with distant dogs, and you drift, dreaming of a world where moles don't judge. Your face might not read like a star chart, but it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the sharp scent of wood smoke drifting through your cottage, the village alive with early chores, but your nose is on high alert. In medieval Europe, how you smell isn't just personal, it's a status symbol, a way to signal wealth or ward off the plague's shadow. You've got a harvest festival tonight, and if you don't smell like you belong in a manor, the village will notice. You rummage for your stash of dried herbs, hoping to weave a scent that turns heads for the right reasons. This fragrance craze bloomed around 1380 when Catherine of Siena's devotees swore her holy aura lingered like roses, inspiring noble to carry pomanders, spiced oranges studded with cloves to mimic divine grace. From Paris to Venice, the elite drenched themselves in floral waters, while villagers like you made do with herb bundles. You grab a sachet of lavender and mint, tucking it into your bodice. It's no noble perfume, but it beats smelling like yesterday's stew. Here's the quirky tidbit: some folks hung pomanders around their necks, believing the scent blocked miasmas, the bad air blamed for disease. You try tying a small bundle of rosemary to your belt, but it dangles awkwardly, brushing your knee with every step. You check your reflection in a bucket of water, your sachet's lumpy, but the mint's freshness gives you a flicker of confidence. Historians still debate whether these scented rituals were about vanity or survival. Some say even peasants used herbs to mask odors and stay healthy, while others argue only the rich could afford to fuss over fragrance. Either way, you're crushing lavender between your fingers, hoping its scent lingers through the festival's sweaty dances. You step out, the village buzzing with harvest prep. The baker's wife catches your eye, her cloak wafting a suspicious whiff of costly rosewater probably bartered from a merchant. She smirks. "Smelling like a lady today." You quip. "Ladier than your stolen roses." Joke number one. And she laughs, but you're both sniffing out the competition. The miller's daughter sways past, a clove-studded apple swinging from her neck like a talisman. You whisper, warding off demons or just bad breath. She grins. "Both, if I'm lucky." Joke two, and the crowd chuckles. Though the festival elder frowns. The festival kicks up with music and ale, but your sachay's slipping, and you're retying at mid-dance. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman who bathed in saffron water so potent it stained her skin yellow. You shudder your lavender's humble but safe. A peddler weaves through, hawking holy essence that smells like sour wine. One whiff, and you'll charm the saints he boasts. You snort. "I'd rather charm the pigs." Joke three, and he slinks off, undeterred. By evening, your herbs are fading, but you're still fragrant enough to dodge snide remarks. The old widow's there, her shawl faintly scented with sage, her calm presence outshining the flashiest palmonders. She's not chasing noble scents, yet her warmth draws every nose. Maybe beauty's less about expensive whiffs and more about carrying your own air with pride. You trudge home, the village settling into a crisp night. Your sachay's wilted, but it held up, and nobody called you a stable hand. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You breathe in the faint mint still clinging to your skin, grateful for its small magic. Tomorrow, you'll face the same sniffing judges, but for now, you're enough. The night hums with owl, and you drift, dreaming of a world where scent doesn't rank. Your herbs might not rival a queen's, but they've carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the faint creak of a cartwheel outside, the village stirring under a chilly dawn. But your thoughts are on your face again this time. It's makeup. In medieval Europe, cosmetics aren't just for vanity, they're a risky art, painting status or ruin with every dab. You've got a betrothal announcement to attend tonight, and if your face doesn't hint at noble grace, the village tongues will wag. You dig out a small clay pot of homemade rouge, praying it doesn't scream tavern wench or poison you by midnight. This makeup mania surged around 1400 when Isabella of Castile's court ladies layered their cheeks with vermilion, a mercury-based blush that glowed like sin but burned like hell. From Vienna to Lisbon, nobles brushed on lead-white foundations and kohl, risking tremors for beauty's sake. You're no duchess, so you mix crushed berries with a pinch of chalk for a safer flush. You dab it on. Checking your tin plate mirror, your cheeks look lively up, but you're hoping it's not a rash waiting to happen. Here's the quirky tidbit some women chewed saffron threads to tint their lips, spitting out the fibers like tiny golden curses. You try nibbling a dried rose petal for a subtle stain, but it just tastes like dust and leaves your lips patchy. You stick to the berry mix, smudging it lightly, The mirror shows a passable glow, though you're no court beauty, more like a flushed milkmaid. Historians still debate whether cosmetics were common among villagers or strictly an elite game. Some say peasants dabbled in herbal tints for festivals, while others argue only the rich braved toxic concoctions. Either way, you're patting your cheeks, muttering about how beauty shouldn't come with a death wish. You step out. The village path crisp with frost. At the betrothal. The baker's wife catches your eye. Her lips suspiciously red, probably cochineal from a shady peddler. She winks. Painting for a prince. You quip, just dodging your poison lips. Joke number 1, and she laughs. But you're both eyeing each other's faces for cracks in the facade. The miller's daughter, her cheeks dusted with something chalky. Looks like she overdid it. You whisper. What's next? Plastering the barn. She giggles. If it gets me a ring. Joke 2. And the crowd chuckles. Though the betrothed couple's kin shoot you a look. The announcement hums with toast, but your rouge is itching, and you're paranoid it's streaking. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman whose lead makeup left her skin gray and peeling, earning her the nickname Ghost Lady. You shudder your berries are safer, but the fear lingers. A peddler slinks by, hawking angel's blush that smells like rancid fat. One touch, and you'll steal hearts, he boasts. You snort. I'd rather keep my face. Joke 3, and he shrugs, moving on. By evening, your makeup's holding, though you're resisting the urge to scratch. The old widow's there, her face bare but radiant, her laughter outshining the painted cheeks around her. She's not chasing cosmetic tricks, yet her warmth paints the room. Maybe beauty's less about toxic tints and more about wearing your spirit boldly. You trudge home, the village settling into a frosty night. Your rouge is fading, but it lasted, and nobody whispered witch behind your back. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You wipe off the berry stain, grateful for its harmless hue. Tomorrow, you'll face the same judging eyes. But for now, you're enough. The night hums with distant wind, and you drift, dreaming of a world where beauty doesn't sting. Your face might not rival a queen's, but it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now. You wake to the soft coo of doves outside, the village stirring gently. But your heart's heavy with dreams of perfection. In medieval Europe, fairy tales and legends paint princesses and knights with flawless faces, setting a standard that haunts every mirror. Tonight's a storytelling gathering by the village fire, and you're itching to shine, even if your face doesn't match the ballad's impossible glow. You smooth your hair, hoping your own kind of beauty will carry you through. This fairy tale fever burned bright around 1450, when tales like Tristan and Isolde spread through courts, describing heroines with skin like snow and lips like rubies. Minstrels sang of knights whose chiseled jaws mirrored their valor, and villagers like you soaked it up, measuring yourselves against myths. You're no Isolde, so you pinch your cheeks for a natural flush and weave a daisy into your braid. It's humble, but it feels like a nod to those storybook maids. Here's the quirky tidbit: some girls tucked charms like a hare's foot into their sleeves, believing it drew the fairy glow of legend. You consider slipping a dried clover into your pocket for luck, but it crumbles, and you laugh at your own superstition. Instead, you rub a bit of honey on your lips for shine. Checking your tin plate mirror. You look more like a cheerful peasant than a princess. But that's closer to the truth. Historians still debate whether these tales shaped everyday beauty or just fueled fantasies. Some say villagers mimicked storybook looks with what they had: flowers, ribbons, hope. Others argue only nobles chased such ideals, while commoners shrugged off the myths. Either way, you're humming a ballad's tune, wishing your smile could rival a heroine's as you head to the fire. You step out, the evening air crisp and smoky. At the gathering, the baker's daughter catches your eye, her hair studded with cornflowers like a tale's maiden. She grins, ready to charm a knight. You quip, "I'd settle for not tripping into the fire." Joke number 1, and she laughs, but you're both playing at fairy tale grace. The miller's son, his jaw scrubbed clean, looks like he's aiming for a knight's rugged charm. You whisper, "What's next?" "Slaying a dragon." He smirks. If it impresses the girls. Joke 2, and the crowd chuckles as the storyteller begins. The tailspin princesses saved. Knights triumphant, but you're distracted, touching your daisy, wondering if you're pretty enough for a saga. You overhear gossip about a noblewoman who starved herself to match a ballad's willowy muse, only to faint at a feast. You shudder, your honeyed lips are enough. A peddler hovers, hawking fairy dust that's just ground chalk. One sprinkle, and you'll live a legend, he boasts. You snort. "I'd rather live till tomorrow." Joke 3, and he slinks off, undeterred. By night's end, your daisy's wilting, but your smile's held fast. The old widow's there, her face lined like a well-read scroll. Her story's outshining the minstrels. She's no fairy tale princess, yet her warmth weaves a magic stronger than any myth. Maybe beauty's less about matching legends and more about telling your own tale. Scars and all, you trudge home. The village hushed under stars. Your braids loose, but it carried you through, and nobody called you plain. You collapse onto your straw bed, the moon's glow slipping through a crack. You tug out the daisy, grateful for its fleeting charm. Tomorrow, you'll chase the same dreams. But for now, you're enough. The night hums with silence, and you drift, dreaming of a world where stories don't judge. Your face might not grace a ballad, but it's yours, and it's carried you through another day. That's enough for now.